This is On the Move with Andria and Kim. Informative, inspirational. Join us as we bring you all the hot topics on current affairs, cultural diversities, relationships, empowerment tips, interviews from movers and shakers in and around our great city, and to get you through your day, right here on the Move.
Welcome to On the Move. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Kim. And we're so excited that you've joined us today. We've got a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about relationships. And without further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're going to turn over to Andrea.
Yes, we are going to kick off our hot topics and we're going to get into our Inspirational Corner. But before we do that, last week we had a tape-in. And Kimberly, you were not here last week, so there was something happening last week. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was. I wouldn't have missed our inaugural episode for anything else, but of course it was my anniversary. And so on account of that, I was off celebrating.
So she was celebrating 10 years, a decade of marriage. So it seems fitting that we are talking about this today. So just tell us a bit before we introduce our guests, but what is it like being married for 10 years? Like, How is that?
Doesn't seem that long. We've been together for maybe about 11 and a half years and married for 10. They say time flies when you're having fun. And I'm not for the least alluding that it's all, because anybody who is in relationships know that relationships is work. But I think what's key is that when you look at it at the end of the day, if all the good outweighs the bad, if it's benefiting you, if you're growing, then you could say it's all worth it. So it doesn't seem like 10 now. Initially, when you just start off, I feel like, you're in your bliss and your infatuation stage. You're like, oh my God, it feels like we've known each other forever. But as the time goes by and the real life comes and you go through it, all of a sudden it doesn't seem like that long. So I feel like it kind of takes the reverse as time goes by. But it's been a lot, and just to God be the glory that we've made it thus far.
That's awesome. Awesome. So we're if you were to say, maybe give a tip or something to a couple that just started out, what would you say to them?
Put God first in everything. And he should be the only middle man. He should be the only middleman in your relationship. Nobody else. Doesn't matter how close they are. No friend, no confidant. I think it's you, your partner, and God. And that's one of the things that's really kept me and ground me, because what we find over time, you could be going through a patch and you disclose things with people and they can't see past your struggle and your pain. And then you and your husband are off living a happy life and you're getting the side eye. So I've really just learned to just trust the process, trust God. And of course, as long as we are on the same page, that you have the basis, the respect, the communication. But once you have the basis and you know that you are on the same page, just to keep God at the center of it all. Like, I don't think I could give any better advice than that.
That's all the advice that we actually need. Honestly, keeping God first and foremost. And our guest today, I'm so excited to Christina. She actually went through a series of ups and downs in her relationship, and she actually wrote a book about it. If you can tell our guests a little bit about yourself and the book that you wrote.
So my name's Christina L. Thomas, and I wrote a book kind of about a journey of my life. I was in a 17-year relationship that was a little bit tumultuous in a way. It was an abusive relationship. Out of that, I have 3 beautiful children, so praise God for that.
Beautiful.
I did have a lot of health scares throughout that relationship, that mental health challenges, sickness, illness, cancer, homelessness. I did grow up in a very nice home with 2 loving parents. But basically, my book is about inspiring people to never give up, to trust God in your hard times and seek Him for wisdom and counsel. Yeah.
Awesome. So this book, first book that you've written. And so what kind of propelled you to write the book? What inspired you, apart from the journey? What made you feel like this is the time that I need to get this out? Like, what was the main objective in writing the book, would you say?
You know, I've never really discussed some of my traumas with anybody, and I'm still healing from them now. And a lot of people, now that I've gone back to school and become a social worker, a lot of people that I'm talking to now are really identifying with my story when I'm either sharing it now in a public sense, in giving advice to people, or just, when I'm talking to my friends and I'm finally letting some of it out, they have said to me, wow, girl, you've been through a lot. Like, you should write a book. And everybody's always like, you should write a book. And you kind of just, you take it as a joke or a grain of salt. But then I thought to myself, you know what? If I could leave something for other people that would inspire them and give them some hope and encourage them, maybe I could give them a book. And if they even look at it as a what not to do, that's good enough. You know what I mean? That's good enough. And I just hope that it would inspire them to want to keep believing in themselves and to never give up.
Excellent. That is so good. And as you talk about never giving up, I know a lot of people that were in relationships and they went through a lot of heartache, a lot of abuse. And we have here Vinita, who is a relationship therapist and coach. What would you say would be the trigger point in a lot of relationships ending?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just wanted to commend you, Christina. It's so hard to come out and be courageous and vulnerable and share your story with the world. I'm also a social worker by profession, and I started specializing in the area of relationships, working with offenders actually in the justice system. So men who were charged with assaulting their spouse or even murder in the federal system. And so when I work with folks who were charged with these things, sometimes there's a power and control wheel that, we have up on the screen. And it basically outlines that, a lot of abuse, people think the word abuse means what you see, right? So if I get hurt, if I get a scar, if somebody's hitting me, something physical or sexual that you could see. But actually most abuse is very subtle. And sometimes we don't even know that we're experiencing abuse. It takes sometimes years and years and layers of brainwashing. And I'm calling it brainwashing. You could probably identify with this, is that, you think that, oh, he just cares about me a lot. Or, he's a little bit jealous, but it's because he always wants to be with me. Or he's like calling me 5 times, like while I'm, at the store, just to kind of make sure I'm okay. And so
they're validating it.
Exactly. So, at first I might see like, and the person tries to convince you that, oh, it's because I care about you and I worry about you. But then that sort of paternalistic and that control, right? Because really all of these behaviors are about control and power.
Right.
And this wheel will show you, like, there are a lot of these subtle things are like, for example, economic abuse. Now, economic abuse is like giving somebody an allowance, like, okay, this is how much you can spend, and treating somebody like a child, right? Whereas you're a grown woman and, you have every right to, if you earn the money, especially, you should be able to spend your money, but, watching what you do, watching where you're going. Another one is isolation, which is huge. Now, what is the best way people can get support? It's through, talking to their friends, talking to their church community, like reaching out for support. But if you isolate someone and you don't let them talk to their friends or their family, or sometimes I've even heard that somebody's, you're talking on the phone and the other person's listening on the other line. What are you saying? Who are you talking to? What are you doing? And before I go any further, I do want to reiterate that this is not just a female to male problem. There are a lot of men out there who are equally abused by women. And I've been seeing more and more of that. And so, this can be anyone. So the point is, I think what you were saying, Kim, is correct, is that, as long as you're both on the same page and you respect each other and you have communication and God is in your life, then that is the key thing. And the key thing about that is giving up control. Because when you have faith, when you believe in God, you don't control someone.
Exactly.
You leave it to the universe. You say, you know what? Take care of us, make sure we're safe, and you don't impose that on someone.
It's interesting that lots of the things that you were touching on in terms of relationship or what plagues victims, it's just psychological. It's not our everyday way of thinking, like the norm, the mainstream. It's not what you see, like you're saying. It's not the physical abuse. It's nothing like that. And that's what we usually equate abuse to. Well, if I don't see a scar, then nothing must not be wrong.
And the thing is, a lot of the perpetrators, they don't realize they're abusers. They don't see anything wrong with what they're doing.
They need help as well. They need help just as well. Just as much as the victim.
They need a lot of help. And a lot of this could be how people were raised, right? So maybe they grew up in a sort of a dysfunctional sort of situation where they thought that was normal. You know, it's normal to raise your voice or to talk down to someone, and this is what they saw. And so oftentimes, you know, people try to look for validation definitely in their partners, but that is the wrong thing to do, right? So, you know, you should know that you're whole.
That's right.
You know, you are already enough.
Yes.
And if you find the right person, they will just enhance what you already are and who you already are.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
Thank you so much. We are talking about relationships. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back after these messages.
This is On the Move with Andria and Kim.
Welcome back to On the Move. Thank you so much for staying with us. We are talking about relationships today. And of course, along with my co-host, we have two lovely guests, an author, and of course, therapist by profession. So, Vinita, we were talking a little bit before the break about your trade as a therapist and how much of the abuse comes by virtue of psychological manipulation. But before we dive more into that, like, how did you get into this field? Like, was that just like a passion? Was it something that happened? Like, what kind of motivated that, or how did that come about? Tell us about that, your path to, because I know you said you did social work as well. So how did the
so social work is my my clinical degree. So I think that, you know, when you get into the field of a helping profession, it's a calling, right? We don't do it for a paycheck. Social work definitely doesn't pay a lot of money. So, you know, you do it and you feel it in your heart. You feel like I'm here for a purpose. There's a reason why, you know, God is asking me to do this. And when you have that burning desire to do something, to educate people, to empower others, then that's sort of where you go. So I specialize in what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And I always found it very fascinating because, you know, it's the stuff that we say to ourselves, you know, the more you tell yourself something, the more you believe it. And so when we're talking about psychological abuse, there's a lot of dynamics there, right? So first of all, you can abuse yourself, which is the first relationship. Right? Is how you, so again, everything's about respect and everything's about communication. So if I don't respect myself, how do I expect other people to respect me? So you have to understand that you're a reflection of the world. And when I was younger, I went through bullying, I went through discrimination, racism, I went through a lot of things. And so, you know, when you have that empathy, you know, I know a lot of people complain and say, well, why did all this bad stuff happen to me in my life? Well, you know what? Maybe there's a reason that stuff happened to you. Because if you didn't have that experience, you wouldn't have that empathy for other people. You wouldn't have that compassion. You wouldn't have that passion for wanting to make a difference. So I really feel now very grateful for the challenges, the trials and tribulations I went through. And I thank God for those experiences. Because if I didn't, if I was a spoiled brat, so to speak, I wouldn't have that in my heart. I wouldn't understand when I have somebody I'm working with who's talking about their challenges. I just wouldn't have that empathy there. So that is what makes me a good clinician, is that I have that lived experience.
Awesome. And that kind of naturally fueled your path.
Feel my path. And now I'm doing my PhD in psychology because I just wanted to, you know, get more into understanding why do people think the way they do. How, if we can brainwash people, if we learn this, because when we're babies, we're not taught to hate people. We're not taught, you know, men should be like this, women should be like this. This is how different races are. We are not taught. Hate is taught.
That's right.
So we can also unlearn that as well.
That's right.
Right? We can unlearn prejudice, we can unlearn discrimination, and unlearn all these power dynamics, right? And so now that's what I hope to do. want to be a university professor one day. It's my passion. It's my dream. And I just hope that, thank you so much for having me on the show.
And you will do it. You were saying, Ray, that if you speak it long enough.
You speak it long enough,
it will happen.
You manifest
the reality.
You're going to manifest.
To Benito, the professor, we're manifesting
and you
that
connect with the energies and the positive people in your life that believe in that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure having you. The nuggets that we're receiving, I hope you guys are all taking notes. These are nuggets. It's very, very good information. But back to Christina. So I know your book is going to be out soon, but what is the message that I think you touched on that you want to get across to your readers? I understand the abuse and different situations in the book. Can you share a little bit without getting too much into the book, but just share a little bit of what you want the readers to come away with?
So definitely, I want people to feel empowered, and I want them to know that there is hope. My hope came when I got to know the Lord, and I got to know the Lord as I was walking through this journey, and I'm so glad because there were so many blessings that came when I fell. And he picked me back up and brought me back up to where I needed to be. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to get back up again. And I also want them to know about the resources that's out there. Part of the book is like letting people know this is what you can do. This is where you can go. Yes. A manual, you know? Yeah. And the other thing is that health concerns and things like that, like mental health, they're very prevalent out there. And a lot of people, especially in our community, we don't go out there and look for help. And I suffered with depression and anxiety for many, many years. I still do. But going out there and getting the help, that's what I needed to do. And that's what my partner really needed to do. And the fact that he didn't realize that, it really dragged a rift in between our relationship.
It is right that there's a bit of a stigma. It's almost like you're ashamed or...
That's true.
For whatever reason, we don't think the help that we deserve in the African-American community, it's like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. If you have cancer, that's real, but, anything psychological, just suck it up, buttercup. What do you think that is?
I think it just comes from many years and generations of people just saying just things like that, suck it up, buttercup, or it's not real, like get over it. But I think that we really need to value ourselves and really look within ourselves, get to know ourselves once again. That's why I was so glad for COVID to slow us down. And take note of self.
Perspective. Give us perspective.
Everything. Exactly. Right. And it gave me time to write this book. So, you know what I mean? So I want people to just know that and just know to believe in themselves. That will take you so much further. And I'm just thankful for the testimony I have from God for having gone through all of this. And I just want to speak it and spread that message out there into the world. And I'm just glad for the platforms like this and the conversations that we have shared this.
Such good synergy. We're so happy to have you both. But tell the viewers how they can get your book. When is the release? And how they can go about getting the book and maybe even connecting with you.
So I'm so excited for my book to come out. It's called Can't Hold Me Down, I'm Wearing My Crown.
Yes.
And I'm hoping for it to be out by the end of September. You can find me on Instagram. It is lthomas676. You can also reach me by email. It's Christina, spelled with a CH, the regular way, .msmc@hotmail.com.
That is awesome. And Vinita, before we go, is there any way you can let our viewers know in terms of resources if they're needing help for mental health or counseling or whatever it is?
Actually, it's never been easier because now the government of Canada is actually doing a fantastic job. Since COVID-19 hit, they're offering free virtual resources, actually. There's Bounce Back, there's BetterHealth.com. There's so many of them. So if you just Google mental health supports COVID-19, there's a flurry of them. And in particular, I like those because they're virtual and they're online. Because I'm finding, especially the youth these days, a lot of them are not wanting to go in person or even speak to someone. But text counseling is a big thing now. Video counseling is a big thing, and that's what I primarily do now. My practice is completely virtual, so I do telephone and video counseling, but some people do text counseling as well. And it's a super convenient way. You don't have to feel like you have to go into a clinic and people are watching you like, you don't feel self-conscious that you're getting counseling. But I think also just destigmatization, the whole thing. And I don't think it's a cultural thing because even in my community, in South Asian community, people do not talk about mental health because I think that, people feel like they're not strong, they're not tough, they can't do it on their own. But nobody should have to do it on their own, because we were meant to be social beings. As human beings, we're meant to connect with each other. It's not natural to our species to just be in silo. We will not accomplish anything. So I believe in solidarity. I believe that we should not be kind of making those kind of comparisons, right? So everybody's vulnerable. No one's perfect. Everyone has issues. Everyone has problems. We should never judge people, right? Because we don't know what their journey is. We don't know what they've gone through to get to where they are, right?
So for resources, the Government of Canada
website. There's also CAMH, and there's all kinds of bounce back. There's betterhealth.com. And I would say, if you're going through an abusive situation, if you think you might be, go to the Ministry of Attorney General website, also the Department of Justice website, and there's actually resources there that talk about abuse is wrong in any culture. That's actually what it's called. And there's 52 different languages or something where it's been translated into, which is really important, because a lot of people coming here to Canada, they might not know it's against the law to do certain things, including in my community. So it is really important to raise awareness and education in this area. And there's one last resource, and that's called the Family Law Information Clinic. These clinics are in every courthouse. So if you're thinking about mediation, if you're thinking about getting a divorce, if you're thinking about getting a restraining order, if you're thinking about any of these kinds of things, it's really important that you do that. And I know that some people are ambivalent about calling the police for help, but they are meant to call if you need them. So, definitely reach out for 911 if you really are in a bad situation.
All right, so you've heard it here on our relationship topic. And I want to thank our guests today. I want to thank you, Christina, for coming on. And thank you, Vinita.
Thank you.
It's so awesome having them on the show. We're going to get right into our Inspirational Corner, and we'll be right back after this.
This is On the Move.
Welcome to our Inspirational Corner. And I just want to leave off with this note. I was reminded of a story of a great gentleman that had a puppy dog. And this dog grew and he loved it so much. And when the dog grew and got pregnant, he would nurture the dog very, very well. And then one day the dog got hit by a car and was wounded. When he took the dog to the vet said to him, you have an option of putting him to sleep, or his legs will be paralyzed and he'll have a limp for the rest of his life. Well, the owner said, you know what, I love this dog so much, so I'm going to keep him, and I'm going to make sure that I nurture him. So even though he nurtured his pup, and the pup was pregnant and he was going to have the babies, and the babies came, and as the time went on and the pups grew and he nurtured his pups, then one day when the pups were of age, they started to walk the same way that the mother would walk. Because remember, the mother was in an accident and lost her leg. So the pups now started to pattern the way that the mother would walk, even though they had 4 legs and they were perfectly fine. And as we touch on the topic of relationship, understanding that if you're in an abusive relationship, or if you're in a relationship that is, something is wrong or whatever it may be, you pass that down to your children. You pass that down to those who are around you. Because even though these pups were perfectly fine, because they were raised by this mother that loved them dearly, they started limping, right? So as we close off this week, I want us to be reminded, as our guest said today, if you're in an abusive relationship, seek help. Because if you don't, it will be passed on to those that are next to you. Is that right, Kim?
That is absolutely right. And just as you were talking about that beautiful analogy, it just brought to memory that it's incumbent on us in whatever capacity that we serve, be it a spouse, a parent, a friend, a manager, whatever it is that we have to, like in this life that we are right now, we're working on our dash. So it's from whenever we were born, 19, how much ever, until dash. And what do we want that legacy to be? What do we want to be said of us? What kind of impact do we want to make? So while we want to trust the process, we have to be cognizant and be purposeful that our efforts are sustained. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's On the Move. It's been a pleasure to have you, for you to watch us. Join us next week.
We'll see you next
same time.
That's right.
Right here for On the Move.